Hello and welcome to another session of Life Skills with Mrs. T. So this is the session that was due to happen on Monday. As you can see, I have my voice back, so this session is in lieu of that. A few weeks back we looked at choosing your sewing machine. So once you've chosen your sewing machine, you obviously need to get it out of the box. So once you've got it out of the box, what do you do with it next? So this is just going to be some tips for you to get started, so that once you get your sewing machine, you're going to feel a bit more confident to be able to tackle a project and sew. So we're going to go through that now. So when you get your machine out of the box, there is a few things that you will get. You'll obviously get a machine. You'll also get a foot plate. So that's the squishy bit that you will have. It'll either come combined or it'll come separate. And you get a plug, again, combined or separate. So it's just get the manual and find on your machine where you need to plug it in so that it's got electricity and it's going to work, because that's always handy. If you've got no electricity, it's unlikely you're going to get your machine working. So that's definitely one of the first things that you need to be doing. So once you've got it out of your box and got it plugged in, then it's kind of going through each bit step by step to figure out what you've got. So you've got your hand wheel here, which, if you can see, will bring the needle up and down. You've got your auto sheath here. So you can get these on some machines, generally the ones that are a little bit that aren't the basic models, and that just helps thread your machine. One tip, if you have got a machine without an auto threader, is to get a piece of paper and pop it behind the needle. If you get your piece of paper and pop it behind the needle, just like so, it'll help you when you thread your machine, so that you can see the thread, and because it's quite a small hole, I don't know if you can see that, but it is quite small. So find out where your bobbin is. So on this one, it's a top loading. Sometimes they're, so this is where I've got all my bits and bobs, but sometimes you might find that they're behind. So they could be here. So it's one place to look. And when you take that off, obviously it helps with cuffs and stuff. But yeah, to get my bobbin, so I just undo that and then take the bobbin out. And then obviously you've got your foot, which you can change depending on what you're doing. So that's sort of the main things that you need to get started. And obviously with this one, it's got a digital screen, but you can get those that don't. But it's just playing around like with your stitches, figuring out what you want. But when you switch it on, in this case, it's just a standard straight stitch, and that's all you mostly need when you start out. There's a couple of other important things. The lever, so that presses. Make sure the presser foot, you can put it up and down. Obviously when you're coming to sew, put the fabric under the foot, press down, and then you would bring the hand wheel towards you to engage the needle before you start sewing. And then you've also got a reverse stitch button, which tends to look like this. And that is really useful for when you start a line of sewing. You would kind of come forward a couple of stitches, go back and come forward again. And that just makes sure that the seam has been strengthened and that it's not likely to the thread is to come undone. And you would do that beginning of a row of stitching, at the end of a row of stitch as well, as do that reverse stitch. So next thing would be thinking about threading the machine. So a lot of machines will have instructions on them. So if you can see here, it's sort of telling you how to thread the bobbin, and I'll go through that in a second. And then again down here, it'll tell you how to put the bobbin into the machine. So let's get started with our threading. So when we put our thread on, it needs to sort of be back to front. So the front end is going in first. And then to do the bobbin, I'm going to follow the instructions. So I'm going under, and then in this case, I'm going around, because if you can see, it's saying around, so I'm going to go around, and then I'm sort of ready to go and thread into my bobbin. So once you've threaded the machine, you now need to thread your bobbin. So if you can see, I've got my thread and I've got my bobbin. I'm going to go from, if you can see, there's a hole here, so I'm going from the inside of the bobbin out, and I'm going to thread it And then once I've got that thread through, I'm going to pull it through, and then I'm going to hold that tight, and then I'm just going to wrap the thread around the bobbin. I don't want to get that caught up, so I'm trying to keep that out of the way. Just a couple of times around, and if it does get caught up, just pull it out of the way. So once you've done that, what you need to do then is place it on the machine. So if you can see there. So now I'm going to click it into place, and that then, if you can see on my machine, it says there, so that is the bobbin is engaged. So what I'm going to do now is put my foot on the foot plate, and I'm just going to hold the thread here just whilst it establishes itself. And then I'm going to let it go. And then once you've filled your bobbin, that will stop. But as you can see there, I'm only doing a little bit on the bobbin. So you would just keep going until the thread stops and the bobbin is full. Next thing, you want to get your bobbin obviously threaded. And as you can see there, there is a picture. So I want to make sure my thread is that side. So we've got a left to right situation. So I pop it in, and then if you can see, there's a little catch there. So I pull it to the catch, and then I follow the, see there, follow the where it's telling me to thread. And again, that's where your manual is really useful to help you decipher where to go with your bobbin. But left to right is the important part. So I've done that. Just put my little cover back on. Now I need to thread the machine. Again, it's about following the instructions. So if you can see here, that's obviously for the bobbin, but now I'm going to move, instead of going around here, I'm going to go for 2. So I'm going to take that off, and then I'm going to follow. So 2 says go down. So I'm going to go down, and then if you can see here, it has a number 3. So you go round and then up to where it says number 4. And then I'm just going to make sure, if you can see there, there's like a lever, and that's where when you have the hand wheel and you move that, that goes up and down. So you've got to make sure the thread is caught on that lever. I then bring it down to my needle. Now obviously if you've got an auto threader, you can use that, but if you haven't, then you would just thread your needle accordingly. So to use the auto threader, as you can see here, there's almost like a little head, almost, I would think it looks a bit like a swan's head. So you want to tuck that left to right. And then under, so this is supposed to hug the needle. So if it doesn't work, so if I do that, that's not working. That's because the needle's too low. So you bring it up to an appropriate position, and then that hugs the needle. So I'm going under the head, I'm doing a left to right. And then under here there's like a little catch, so if you can see, like it's not coming forward, I've sort of caught the thread, and then when I pull that towards me, I get a little loop at the back. I don't know if you can see that there, and then I just pull that through, and then that is my machine threaded. If you haven't got an auto threader like this, and you do need to thread it accordingly, then what you would do, you could either just pop it into the hole straight away, or you could get your piece of paper and you could put it behind, because it helps show the hole that bit better, especially if you're struggling. You might find though, if you're struggling to thread, have a look at the end of your thread. So if you can see here, my thread is split, so it needs to be, when it's split, it's much more difficult to thread the needle. So I've just snipped the end off there, and then I'm just going to thread it through, pull it through, and then always make sure you're going front to back with your thread, and then put it behind the machine. And that's you ready to go. So then it would just be getting your scrap piece of fabric and sewing away. So thank you for joining me as I've demonstrated how to get your machine set up. If you've got any questions or any topics that you're like, oh, do you know what, I'd really like to know how you do that, then feel free to leave the question on my Facebook page and I'll get back to you when able. And you know, where possible, I will film for you so that you will have an idea of how to do it in practice. Well, thank you for joining me and take care.